Um, Really, the purpose of tonight is kind of to share some insight into ways to support yourself both financially and mental and behavioral health, and really just trying to get a pulse on our community, check in with everyone, and see what we can do to help everyone out there in order to kind of survive this pandemic together. So, Brian, if you want to introduce yourself and hop to that next slide.
So I'll go to the next slide here. Hi, my name is Brian Rice. No, I'm the president and registered investment advisor of Rice Wealth Management Group. I've got over 30 years experience in providing financial planning on a comprehensive basis. We specialize in investment management services for not only individuals, but also small businesses. I am an acting board member of the Mental Health Association of Monmouth County. And I am fourth generation lifelong resident of Fairhaven, and they have not kicked me out of the town yet. I'm still a husband and a father of two beautiful children, a 12 and a 14-year-old. And I don't know, I can add stuff, but we can talk later.
All right, I'll hop that next slide.
Yeah.
Hi, George Hollowell. I'm a New Jersey licensed professional counselor, also known as an LPC. I'm a team member of Navesink Psychological Services, which Dr. Strobel here is the owner of. I've been working there for a little over 3 years now. One of the best decisions I think I made is joining that team. I'm also an academic advisor at Brookdale Community College. I've spent some time there in the advising capacity. I'm also a Lifelines trainer for the Mental Health Association, which Lifelines is a program where we go into schools and do suicide prevention work with staff members, which is really important work, as you can imagine. And probably most importantly, I'm a husband and father of two, trying to stay positive, during challenging times. When I thought about this presentation, it's I think that's what it's all about. We might be coming from different backgrounds, but it's an interesting time to say the least, without using other language. But that's why we're here, right?
Yep. Next.
All right. So I'm Matt Strobel. I'm a certified school psychologist as well as licensed clinical psychologist, and I own and operate Navesink Psychological Services in Red Bank. I'm also a visiting clinical supervisor for the Graduate School of Applied and Professional Psychology at Rutgers, which is where I graduated from, as well as a board of trustee member for the Friends Grow Friends Foundation, which is based in Fairhaven, and provides social skills training and services for a variety of ages. I'm also on the Two River Competent Community in Fairhaven. Shout out to Doug, who I saw was on the call, as their behavioral health coordinator. And most recently, I have been appointed as a social, emotional, and behavioral health director for Garden State Esports, also based out of Fairhaven, where we are providing services to about 20% of the schools in New Jersey and increasing that number daily, in how to start esport leagues and teams in different school settings. My role there is helping to provide social and emotional training for all of our athletes. And then I'm also a father of two, a 4.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. So kind of living in chaos day to day, and have to remember to hide the elf tonight for the stupid elf on the shelf that my wife thought was a good idea. So tonight, like I said, we want to just really check in on the well-being of our community, provide some insight into what you all may be experiencing, and at least what we're experiencing as fathers and as professionals. Trying to explore some strategies to help everyone feel a little bit better, at least. And then just share some resources for follow-up. We have a limited amount of time tonight, so we're going to cover as much as we can, as quickly as we can, but also give you some takeaways that you can explore this further if you so desire. So to get started, we really start looking at mental health. For me, mental health really has a core fundamental base in physical well-being. That really stems from the big three, the trifecta: exercise, sleep, and nutrition. That's changed for most people since COVID started, whether that's, I'm home all day, so I'm just eating what's ever in the house because, when I went to work, I ate what was there. Now I'm home, I can just go to the snack closet as much as I want. People's sleep patterns are completely changed because you don't have to get up and go to work in the morning for a lot of folks. It's real easy to, start cracking beers earlier in the afternoon than it was, when you were commuting to work or wherever you were going. So nutrition's definitely changed. Sleep has definitely changed. And there's often less time for you to incorporate exercise into your daily routine, or less of a desire to do so. If you don't have to get up and get dressed and look good to go to work, who cares? So a lot of people have been kind of caught in this loop. And there's been some pretty drastic changes, especially as the pandemic has gone on. In the beginning, some people did a little bit better, in my experience, with kind of keeping up with these types of core values. But as time has gone on and we've been stuck in this for longer and longer and longer, I think it's gotten harder and harder to commit to these things. Factoring in also, a lot of things are closed. If you had a gym membership, your gym may be closed, or if you train martial arts, maybe your jujitsu studio is closed, or whatever the case may be. So that's become incredibly difficult. We can't control that, so the first step here is kind of accepting that, but really trying to think about what can we do, what is in our control. Is there ways that we could try and eat a little bit healthier, or really work on shutting that cell phone off at night and going to bed, or at a minimum, getting up and going for a walk, getting up out of your chair. I know that my role as a therapist has changed greatly, in that I used to have people come to the office and I'd interact with them, and at least at a minimum between clients, I'd get up and walk to the waiting room and walk the next person back. Now I can catch myself sitting in this chair all day, staring at a screen, interacting with people, and that takes a huge toll on your well-being. So if you go to the next slide, how important is sleep? I've listened to a lot of research in this area. Some of the things that people don't realize is that, sleep and lack of sleep can have drastic impacts on your health as well as your cognition. And a lot of really bad things can happen. You're at a much greater rate for obesity, heart disease, car accidents skyrocket. I was listening to one interesting study about daylight savings time. And what was really interesting there is the rates of people who are admitted to the ER for cardiac events skyrocket when they lose literally that 1 hour of sleep, which is interesting in and of itself. But the researchers also looked into what happens when we gain that hour of sleep. And shockingly, or maybe not so shockingly, the rates of ER visits for cardiac events are greatly decreased. Things such as even like the Challenger accident are now being traced back to maybe those people weren't sleeping well, and not getting enough sleep in order to get that rocket off. And then, we had this hugely tragic event. Lots of research is being done on doctors coming out of medical school where there's no opportunity to sleep because they've got to do all this work in class and perform, and how many surgical accidents occur. So sleep is really, really important. I'd say out of the three, nutrition, sleep, and exercise, this is the one, if you can only focus on one area, to really try and put some effort and energy into. So if we look at kind of the benefits of exercise, most of these things we know, it's just a matter of committing to them. Exercise improves learning and mental performance. It can decrease all the things we don't want: depression, stress, anxiety, Alzheimer's, brain aging, dementia. And at a minimum, it really helps release those endorphins in your brain so that you feel better. This time sucks for most of us. So anything that we can do to help us feel better mentally and physically, go for it. And really, getting just some exercise is great. A lot of people kind of get stuck on thinking that you need to have some kind of crazy workout, high intensity interval training. That's not really what the research shows. That's great stuff, but even a simple 10 to 20 minute brisk walk during the day can have huge and lasting and impactful benefits. What's really tricky, I think, now, especially as a father, is finding that time. In the past, my kids would be going to daycare or school, and I could go to the gym and then go to the office, or vice versa. Now, kids are home on virtual learning. There's not that time of the day. So what you can really try and do is find that balance and make it family time. Maybe the whole family goes out for a walk. Maybe the whole family goes and runs around in the backyard, or you take the kids fishing, or whatever the case may be. This is going to have benefits for both you as a parent as well as your child. 10 minutes of exercise can increase concentration and attention. These are real studies that prove this. Physical activity can increase your IQ as well as academic achievement test scores. Who doesn't want their kid to do a little bit better in school, especially now with the virtual learning and how difficult that is for kids to learn? And if you have a child with a diagnosis such as ADHD, depression, anxiety, exercise can be hugely important in helping that child be able to get through what we're all going through. And then healthy eating, again, think about it, like if you were a supercar, would you just be putting cheap fuel into you? No, you'd be putting the best fuel you could possibly buy into your Lamborghini. So It's the same for you, right? You need to eat well, you need to eat healthy things in order to perform at your best. So trying to just find that well-balanced diet where you are kind of getting your nutritional needs met is going to make you feel better both mentally and physically as well. So George, why don't you talk a little bit now, more kind of from the mental health perspective?
Sure thing, Matt. So under pressure, every time I say that, I kind of think about the Queen David Bowie song. So look at this cartoon here. I think it kind of says a lot, right? Your dad's been under a lot of pressure lately. So when we're under pressure, usually we either fold, or that's what also creates a diamond, right? And sometimes it's a little bit of both. It's kind of like a mixed bag. I think what Dr. Strobel said is very true, where times have changed, where the routine has changed. The way we live our lives is different across the board. And why we had this, specifically for males and one for females, is like, I think we have to admit that the male experience might be different as a father, whether it's traditional or not. But that picture kind of says it all. And I think we all may have felt like that at one time. Sometimes we feel like that diamond, or sometimes we feel like, am I crumbling? And that's where the mental health piece comes into. How do I click forward?
I did.
Oh, thank you, Brian. So this is a cool quote, right? And I'm going to talk a lot about this wonderful book, The Four Agreements, what is expected of me, right? At an early age, we learn punishment and reward and form an image of perfection in order to be good enough to get the reward. We live by an image of how we should be in order to be accepted by everybody else, and our fear of being rejected becomes the fear of not being good enough. In the end, we are not good enough for ourselves because we don't fit our image of perfection, so we punish ourselves with our own judgment. The reason why I included this quote is, a role as a human, as a male, as a father, is something that's projected onto us, right? It's from our own fathers, our grandfathers, society, whatever we want to call it. And then we internalize and we decide who we're supposed to be. However we were existing before COVID could have been one version. This might be a different version. But we're walking around day to day, but behind everything is that pressure, right? What's expected of me? How much money am I supposed to be making? How much time am I supposed to be spending with my children? How much time am I supposed to be dedicating to work or myself, my health, right? And there's all these expectations. But at the end of the day, we're punishing ourselves when we judge, and we put so much stress. We can say it's society, the government, whatever it is, that's all true. But in the end, we're the ones that suffer, right? So when we talk about mental health, it comes from us, right? And what we internalize is what we put out, right? It's what people pick up on. And as a father, I know when I'm with my kids and I'm in a good mood, they feel it and they pick up on it. But when I'm stressed and it's getting to me, I'm not present, right? I might be more irritable, might be more likely to yell, right? And they take all that stuff in. So there's that stress. What's expected of me? What am I supposed to do right now? Am I supposed to maintain control during a time that doesn't feel like there's control, or am I just supposed to be present? It's hard to be present when your mind's swirling. So I really love that quote, because it's like, are we ever really good enough for ourselves? Because that's what it comes down to. Brian, thank you. All right, so the four agreements, right? When I was trying to plan how I would talk about this, I was talking to Matt about it because we're fond of this book, because it's really simple. It's a way of laying out complex ideas in a really simple way, right? So I'm going to kind of go over these and talk a little bit about that, but these are all things that are kind of, we already know, right? And I'm going to talk from a mental health perspective, but when we're looking for guidance, sometimes it's nice to have a place to go, right? Some people, right now, people who are in recovery, I'm reading about how it's hard to get to an AA meeting. I know they finally upped the numbers that more people can go to that. I know when it comes to community, like Matt was talking about with like gyms, gyms are a community, that's up and down, right? That's kind of changed. This isn't even the same, right? I'm really glad we can do this, but this is not the same, right? I used to spend most of my day with Matt, and I would see him at least in the waiting area. I'm in my daughter's room right now, right? It's very isolating. So we have to think about how things have changed and how to kind of ground ourselves. Sometimes you got to think about it a really simple way. So what I like about these four agreements, starting with number one, be impeccable with your word, right? The word impeccable, I found out, actually means without sin, right? Which has kind of like a weird connotation to it. But what it really means is be responsible with your words and your actions, right? And it's something that is kind of like a kindergarten credo, right? But it's something that we forget about. our words have power, right? When we speak to others, it's a representation of who we are. It's a representation of how we're feeling, what we're about, what our morals are, and it's whether people trust us or not. And we can use those words for good. We can make others feel understood, respected, or, if we're having a bad day, we can make them feel like crap, right? So the word is, there's a pressure in how we speak. Right now I'm doing public speaking. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I realize what I'm putting out there represents who I am, and just to trust that, right? So your words really important. Words have power, especially as a parent. I know I was raising a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. It's weird even saying that. I'm at the point now where I can't even spell out curses, right? So I think if I curse, I'm going to get judged. My kid's going to go to school and repeat that in kindergarten. That's a weird feeling. I used to be able to do that freely, right? And I say complex things. My daughter asked me questions. I'm like, oh man, I have to explain. She's asking about the meaning of life, and I'm teaching her. My words have value. She's taking everything in. We can look at it 2 ways. There's a lot of pressure there to use your words and, oh my gosh, I have to be right, or do your best. Speak the best you can and be willing to apologize when you need to and admit that you're flawed. But words can also fix, and hopefully turn things around when you're mindful of it. So it's just being mindful of speech and what that represents, and without judging yourself. So after everything I talk about, it's like, here's the importance to it, but take out the judgment and allow for some mistakes and allow it to happen. Number 2, don't take anything personally. That's a no duh, right? How many times have people said that to you? Oh, don't take it personally. It's like, we say it, but do we really believe it, right? Everything's personal, right? But this kind of comes to the perspective that when someone else is speaking, they're coming from their perspective, their experiences, their upbringing, their values, whatever it is, and what do we see all the time? Everyone takes things personally. And we're just after a huge election. I could get into that all I want, but it's a perfect example of how many people are taking everything personally. We got this side and we have that side, and everyone's just getting all worked up. And in reality, when we're speaking, we're coming from our own pain, right? Our own anxiety, our own happiness, our own memories. It's all coming from that person. So if someone's coming at you in a certain way, they're be kind and they're happy, all right, it feels a little bit better. But in some kind of you're feeling judged or at you, it's hard not to take it personally. It's hard not to take it as a someone's firing bullets at you. Well, if you look at it like that's their pain, they're having a bad day. Sometimes it's nice to have some compassion in that moment to diffuse the situation. That's how I've maintained a lot of friendships during this whole November season. Like they'll say things I don't agree with, and I'm like, all right, cool. That's just where they're coming from. I'm not battling with them. Why do I want to lose friends over things that really don't matter? Right. So the idea of taking things personally, it's simple, but it's complex. So everyone's fighting their own battle is what kind of keeps me in check. Right. And we can talk about spouses in that regards. We're holed up in this house, whatever big or small your home is, you have potentially children or you have a spouse or whatever the situation might be. Imagine if you walk around taking everything personally that people said to you, especially your spouse. I know when I do that, it's quite an evening, right? And that stays with you, and that becomes resentments, right? So if we take that moment to go, I want to understand, I don't want to just take this personally. It's going to help you. It's going to help you take that step forward and have a better day, hopefully. Don't make assumptions. This was my favorite one for a few different reasons. I started off my career doing group therapy with individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. And there's this one young man who was on the autistic spectrum, or the autism spectrum, and he made this best joke. He says, you know what they say about assumptions? Don't make an ass of you and me, when you assume. And I always think about that moment that even he's a younger gentleman. He was I think he was a young adult, 19 years old. He even got it. When we assume, you make an ass of yourself and the other person. You're putting yourself out there and creating a situation that could be very uncomfortable and potentially disconnecting people. And if we're living in disconnected times, why do I want to feed into that? So assumptions, there's parts of our brains that fill in the blanks. Could I tell you about the system that is? Not off the top of my head, but our brains naturally use stereotypes and fill in the blanks with words because our brain wants to find patterns, right? So assumptions make sense. It's like we want to fill in the blanks. We're all detectives. Right? I love those detective shows because I love like filling in the blanks and trying to solve the case. But when you're having a personal relationship with someone, and How does it feel when someone assume things about you? Like, I think Brian made a really good point. Like, you could say, oh, he lives in a certain area or has a boat. You're going to think all these things. What does that do to the relationship? Right off the bat, there's a lot of negativity. There's some jealousy or whatever you want to call it. What does that do? What does that do to your mental health? You're carrying that around. So I know when people assume things about me, it gets, I'm a therapist, right? What do you think people say about me? Who wants to talk to me at Christmas dinners? They're like, oh, you're analyzing me. And I say, well, you didn't pay me my fee. So like, why would I even bother to do that? And it cuts the tension, right? So I'm not what they think they are, right? Really well said, Chris. Stigma is a terrible thing. It's horrible. And assumptions and stigma are the same thing. Talk about mental health, right? I mean, every single one of my clients, I worked with children from the age usually of 9 up to an adult, a guy I just met with, 78 years old, wonderful guy. Just the fact that you have people talking about their mental health, which I don't know what happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. Males talking about their mental health. There's a lot of assumptions, right? You talk about your feelings. What does that make you? I'm not going to say some of the words that first come to my mind, right? This is recorded. But I know how I was judged if I ever showed my feelings as a kid, right? Weak, exactly. And that's even the kind word, right? When we talk about males and mental health, it's like there's a lot of assumptions. So I think one of the reasons why I love this platform and the fact of get to do the work I do is that let's break down that stigma. Let's break down that stigma of what you assume someone else is experiencing and give that freedom. Because if you're doing that for somebody else, it comes back to you, is my hope, right? Because if you're going around assuming things about people, how are they ever going to know who you are? So that reciprocal relationship, I think, is really important. Just to remind ourselves sometimes, to just take the time, like, just don't make those assumptions. Always do your best. This kind of sounds like any good coach, right? Any good father, any good role model, whoever it might be in your life, even a mother or spouse. Another kindergarten kind of lesson, but do we really follow that? I don't know. In the moment, it's really hard. What is your best? Our best 2 years ago might have been, working in the city and traveling on planes. I worked a job before this was a very corporate job. I was flying to San Diego. I was remotely managing a team of like 5 to 6 people and training them how to do their job. Extreme pressure from the higher ups. And that was hard, right? And I never thought that I was doing my best. I've changed directions. I'm happy that I did. But at that time, I just never felt like I was doing my best, but I really was. Because who was I comparing myself with? Oh, the people who were maybe either making more money or appeared on the surface to be more confident. At the end of the day, if we all right here spoke about our insecurities, we probably all feel the same things, maybe not at the same time. So we're talking about always doing our best. It doesn't mean slacking, right? Some people feel like always do your best is just, okay, I don't have to put any pressure on myself. I can just let go. Right? Because that's the other opposite with this whole COVID situation is life is changing. Some people might submit. I call that maybe depression, right? Anxiety might kind of make us feel a little bit frozen. But always doing your best is really just being in the moment. The word mindfulness gets overused and sometimes misconstrued, but what I consider mindful is just, I'm here right now. What I love about being a therapist, and I talk to Matt all the time about it, I might be having the worst day. My kids might be having a tough day. I might be fighting. Whatever's going on, when I'm locked in, it's almost like a high because I'm in that moment. I'm with that person. I feel like I'm making some kind of impact. And if not, I'm just there. I'm just doing my best. And that feeling is something we often don't get rewarded for if it's not attached to money or, physical rewards. So the idea of always doing your best and reevaluating what that is, especially during these times. My best might not be performing the same way I did a year ago, but if I'm doing my best today, it makes a difference. I talk to people all the time who have severe depression. We're working 40, 60 hours a week. And now if they work 1 day a week, it's amazing. I have to work with them to get to that point where they can go, I showed up to work today. Baby steps, another overused term, but it's so true. If you look at the big picture, it's a mountain. If you take it step by step, it's manageable, hopefully. So the idea of always doing your best, putting next foot forward, and having goals, right? So when I talk about always doing your best, setting those small goals, long-term and short-term, right? Some people feel like now that it's COVID. You have to get rid of all the goals. You can't have this long term. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Yeah, I think we're all experiencing anxiety because there's no guarantees right now. All right, well, if someone wants to go get a degree, go get a degree. I work at Brookdale. I'm just like, if you want to pursue that degree, why don't you go for it? But what are you going to do right now to get there? Because it seems overwhelming. Oh, I have to take this math class. I have to pay this money. I can't do it. Step number one. And what's going to get in the way of you getting to step number one? How to get to step number two? Okay, let's stop there. Always do your best with each one of those steps. And do I follow all these rules? Absolutely not. So that's why you have to surround yourself around people who are going to get you there, who are going to remind you. And it can be anyone in your life. Obviously, I'm a big fan of therapy. It's been a while since I've been in therapy, right? But when I was, that helped, but it's a friend, going camping. I just went on a great camping trip. And that was a time just to spend with somebody who I feel very close with, and just being out there and just hiking and just being out in the woods, away from all this garbage, all the electronics and all the drama and all the politics. And I was just there. So surround yourself with people who are going to help you do your best. And maybe a good thing about COVID or being separated from other people is realizing who's toxic and who isn't. And that's not a judgment. That's just reality. I think how you feel around some people versus others. So maybe this is the time to kind of find creative ways to keep those relationships going. Who are the people that you can trust? Who are the people who bring you to that best, that who you are? And maybe deciding how you want to spend your time. So you can look at it two ways. Either I can't see anybody, or I can choose now who I should surround myself with. And hopefully the people in your home are those people. And if they're not, there's a way to deal with that as well, because I'm not going to pretend like every relationship is healthy. But as a father, that also changes things. All right, I think we're good on that slide.
Oh,
thank you, Brian.
This is me. All right. So thank you. That was great. I can relate to a lot of it. And I'm sure, once you break down the barriers of ego and all that, it's easy to reach out and get help or talk to somebody. And there's a lot to be said for that. So, when I was doing these slides, or actually my assistant was doing the slides, I was just feeding her the information. We're like, yeah, where were we back in March, right? When this thing really hit and the market was down, 38%. And I relate to a lot of things in the market because that's what I do, but I know that's not just the masses, right? So we have other real concerns rather than just seeing your equity portfolio or 401k drop in value. We've had some real difficult situations with people, be laid off, fired, whatever you want to call it. Furloughed is the big word now, right? The state furloughed everybody. And I didn't really understand what that word meant, but it's basically you're asked not to come back to work, but we might have you do some work, but you're not going to get paid. And so at the end of the day, they were fired. Whether they're going to come back or not, we don't know that. There's a lot of uncertainties right now with small and large businesses, as well as the state and local government agencies that may not bring a lot of employees back. So I know it's been a trying time for people. And this gets down to really just, managing, personal finances during a crisis like none other. I've never seen anything like this. I've been on the street since the 80s, and it's unprecedented. So, and there's always been a huge disconnect between us and Main Street. And so I'm trying to bring kind of the Main Street view into this, and what do we do? What would I suggest to people that can't make their bills or make their payments? So there are plenty of relief programs. We saw the PPP and the PPE and all that kind of stuff, but it didn't really get to a lot of hands. We all got a check for $1,200, and that doesn't go very far, right? So make a list of current bills and billing companies. Go through your credit cards, go through your utilities, things that are needs that you have to have to survive, right? You need shelter and food, basically. There's a lot of companies and a lot of programs within those companies to ask for help. Again, just like George and Dr. Strobel were talking about, just ask for help. Sit down, make some phone calls. If you have a mortgage, there's a way to get a forbearance or a deferment. And release from paying 60, 90 days. Some of them were extended. Some of those programs were extended. It gives you a little leeway, right? You're going to have to pay for it, but it's paid at the end of it. So what if you have a 30-year mortgage, you're 28 years into it, and now you have to make 3 or 4 more months payments. It's not the end of the day, right? It's not something to really lose a lot of sleep over if you can do that. If you're renting, ask your landlord, obviously, for a rent break. Explain, they're in the same, everybody's in the same situation here for the most part, right? With a small business, especially with real estate, and looking at rents and seeing what tenants can survive and which tenants can't, in terms of businesses. And it also comes down to, personal apartments, not that it's survival or not, but it's being able to make those payments. So I think it's imperative to try to head it off at the pass, rather than 6 months down the road, your landlord's chasing you, for back rent. Now you have to make up something to catch up with that. So I'd rather see people hit it head on and say, look, Mr. Landlord, I've been laid off, furloughed, whatever you want to call it. Can we work something out going forward? The last thing they want to do is throw you out on the street, because there aren't a lot of people coming in to rent their buildings to begin with, right? So auto lenders, all that kind of stuff. Again, just try to be upfront, try to get it ahead of time rather than trying to play catch up. The big thing also, even when I sit down to put together a plan, whether they're extremely successful and we have all kinds of money to invest or just starting out, we always sit down and put together a budget, right? And I had a client years ago, I said, Brian, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but if I really need a budget, I don't need you. It means I have plenty, I don't need you to invest my money if you're talking about me being on a budget, because as soon as you bring out budget, they think that there's lack of money or that I have to be strict and adhere to this budget. No, it gives you kind of an overview of here's where I spend what and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And if I have something in front of me, it's a lot easier to adjust that than trying to think about, okay, what do I pay for food? What do I pay? If it's all there, I can say, wow, I paid that much in, food, or I pay that much in going out to dinner. Now that expense probably isn't there much anymore, right? With the pandemic, but maybe I'm calling out and ordering to eat more often, doing curbside pickup, right? Just make it easy because I'm home all day, or my wife's home all day, and the last thing she feels like doing is cooking because she's been home all day, right? It's easy to just pick up the phone, and the smart people, the smart restaurants, right away they have an app, right? So it's a lot easier to get that. I'm just going to go on an app on Lupo up the street and pay, $18 for a pizza or whatever, and did I really budget for that? Or, my income has dropped, my budget has changed. So if you have that in black and white, you can see where I can adjust things, right? Where we can adjust kind of going forward or today, and then go from there. If money comes in, then you adjust the budget. So there are ways to create the budget. You go either pen to paper and do it yourself. There are areas, create a budget. There's the nfcc.org. It's a non-for-profit. They do have financial counselors that are there available to assist you. There are simple programs. You can go online, just Google budgets, and it's not, it's simple to go through. Hair care, I don't have that expense, obviously, but there's a lot of things you can do online now and just create a budget without getting really, crazy about it. Just a simple black and white budget. Do it real quick. Doesn't have to be some crazy spreadsheet, just to have it there. Get a job. You're healthy enough, able to work. If you think that you are, consider applying for a new job. Everybody sits around and says, oh man, I'm unemployed. Well, what are you doing to try to get a job? Maybe there's something out there that that you thought about doing. So like George said, maybe you want to try something different, some different industry, whatever it is. There's plenty of businesses that I've driven around that have help wanted signs. Maybe you don't want to do that, or you never thought about doing that, but it's a lot easier to find another job if I'm employed, right? So why not just, $15 an hour or whatever, people can look down their nose and say, well, I was making $100,000 a year and now I'm going to go, be a greeter at Walmart. But at least you're out, you're doing something. And not only just from the financial standpoint, just the psychological standpoint, as George and Dr. Strobel pointed out, at least you're out doing something, you're being productive. Yeah, maybe it isn't what you wanted to do, but it's better than sitting around at the house. and at least you have some sort of income coming in. Little bit, every little bit helps. I was going to ask somebody to push the slide, but it's me. So, I keep it kind of simple, stay home, stay healthy, and health is financial health. Health is a huge part of this. It's very easy to take financial health and have it turn negative, and then that leads to all kinds of psychological problems. And I keep coming back to that because I'm sure we've all felt, some kind of pressure from a monetary or a financial standpoint, right? And I think that it's very imperative to just reach out, talk to people. The new CARES Act, which was that was passed, made it a lot easier if you're working for an employer and lucky enough to have a retirement plan. It's a lot easier to access those funds today and not worry about the penalties that are otherwise impact the distributions from those plans. So there are ways to access, your IRAs, your 401ks, 403bs, whatever plans you have, to at least have some kind of cash flow. Yes, you don't want to have to take them, but if you're put into that situation where you need access to capital, the CARES Act really made it a lot easier to access those funds and not have to worry so much. So I have the exact figures if anybody has questions of exactly how it works. But basically, I mean, you can withdraw up to $100,000 on some plans, not worry about the 10% early withdrawal penalty. They actually also extended our required minimum distributions for people that are older that were bucking up against having to take RMDs. They don't have to take them. So that's the flip side. If you don't need the money, don't add additional taxable income. They've made it easier for that also to defray those payments. Whereas before you were required to take distributions, they've increased that age. So there are, the IRS notice 2020-50, there's provisions in the CARES Act for qualified individuals that were originally defined, with IRAs and owners of IRAs. So if you were quarantined, couldn't go to work, furloughed, again, laid off, fired, there's a lot, there's some other programs also that are available. It's just a matter of being able to find the resources, which we have here. Feel free to shoot me an email, shoot me a text, messages here. So Chris, are good faith payments a good avenue, meaning possibly not the full amount, but at least something? I would say so, sure. Why not? Something's better than nothing, right? If you can't make rent at $2,000 and say, hey, look, Mr. Landlord, I can afford, I did my budget, right? And I can afford $1,000 a month. And I'm sure he's not going to say no, but he's going to say, okay, all right, you have a good faith for the other 1,000 or the other 50%. What would be your strategy to catch up, and how long do you think this is going to last? And that is a big unknown, right? We're going into this triple wave, right? There was a second wave. Now we're into a third wave of this pandemic. We don't know how it's going to end. I do know from my standpoint, from looking at the markets, from looking at everything, all the data, all the biotechnology and the virus, I feel strongly we're going to be probably a lot better in the second quarter of 2021. And the markets are sensing that. And that's why the markets continue to do well. We're always looking out 6-12 months. But we can't, I don't take it to the bank, obviously, but I feel very strongly that we'll be a lot better shape in the second quarter of 2021 than where we sit today. So I think the honesty and integrity and upfront, and try to stay ahead of it makes so much sense that people, instead of crawling, it's very easy for us to crawl in our hole, right? We've got our egos, we have all this that George was talking about, that just open up and be like, look, I can't swing it, but I can do this. And it's better than zero, right? And that's the big thing that I'd like to convey to people, is don't crawl in that hole, and it just gets deeper and deeper, and you don't know where it's going to end, because we have no way to, sure, I can be a guru and say 2021 second quarter, we're going to be great. right? But I don't know, you know, we were supposed to have a vaccine distributed to everybody through the military in October. And I'm not going to get into politics, but that, we knew that was pie in the sky wasn't going to happen. But December looks like we're going to have, some doses out to the frontline people. So things are going to get better. Just be upfront with people and say, look, I think, here's what I can do. Kind of thing. So I don't want to keep rambling. We've got about 17 minutes left. So I don't know if there's a way to open up the questions. I know there's a couple of things in the chat. I just very humbled to be able to be part of this. And I never thought of this side of the business trying to really, really help and give back, because I always thought that, we had to give back through the mental health side, but the financial health is a key ingredient in this and a key area in this that causes a great deal of mental health issues. I'm not sure how many, people you guys talk to, and a lot of their mental stress and mental issues are derived from, money or finances or feeling less than, right? George was saying, and Matt was saying, you feel less than, right? I'm not making 150 grand. Well, 50 grand is still above the median average for the nation. It's not, in our area, but it doesn't matter. 50 grand is better than zero. And so again, coming to landlords or any debt holder that you have, and just saying, look, here's my situation, and you're not the only one, so that's pretty much what I wanted to cover.
So Brian, you can hop to that next slide then, because it's a perfect segue, actually. One of the things that happens, thank you, that happens all the time. I field all the calls for this practice, all the intake calls, or most of them actually. People call all the time, hey, I'm looking for some help for myself, for my child, for my significant other, for a family member, whomever, and the reality of the situation is this is a paid for service. Mental health is a paid for service, and that's part of the conversation. It's my least favorite part of the conversation, but it always is part of the conversation. And mental health services can be very costly. So, I definitely want to kind of speak to that and kind of provide some resources for people out there. The first thing is you want to find someone that has a good reputation that you can trust. It's easy for me to say in this position, don't worry about the cost, even though that's not really all that true. But, the old adage of, sometimes you get what you pay for is very true. George works at this practice, and, he can attest to, we see a number of clients who have been to multiple other people and, for whatever reason, just hasn't gone that well. And it's lost time, and it's also lost money. So definitely spend some time really fact checking and looking into the person that you're going to call. Ask around, ask friends and colleagues. Again, someone brought up stigma in the chat. So that's sometimes difficult. You don't want to go and ask and say, hey, I think I need some help. Do you know anybody that might be good in the community for me to reach out to? So a strategy you can use in that case is to kind of hop on some of those like Facebook groups or other social media sites where there are referrals, and you don't have to post a question saying, hey, I'm looking for a therapist. You can simply search for that, therapist, and see what comes up. Other people have already asked that question for you. Sometimes there's more details about specifically what they were looking for. And you can try and find someone that way. And that way it's anonymous. No one knows, that you did that search, and you're not putting yourself out there, if you're worried about people knowing anything. Another option would always be to call your insurance carrier or go online and see who is in your network. A lot of places do not take insurance up front, but do offer out of network benefit coverage. So consider that as well. And those three websites there, Psychology Today kind of has a whole bunch of people on there that, you can type in all different types of searches. You're looking for a male therapist who practices a certain way or treats a certain type of issue. Locator.apa is the American Psychological Association. Psychology Today has all kinds of mental health professionals, licensed professional counselors, licensed family and marriage therapists, social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, etc. And then there's also MOCPO, which is the Monmouth Ocean County Psychological Association, and they have a directory as well of practitioners in that area. What's pretty cool right now is that most practitioners are doing telehealth. So, if you go online and you find someone and you're in this area, but they're up in like Bergen County and you're like, wow, this person looks like a great fit for me, you can still see them and not have to worry about driving up there, because it's through telehealth. So, I'm treating people pretty much across the state at this point in time, who, if they had to drive here, probably wouldn't make the commute. But because of telehealth, it's very easy for them to log on from the comfort of their home and have that session. So I'm certainly open. If anyone has any questions further how to do that, our contact information will be at the end. I'm pretty well tapped into the Monmouth and Ocean County therapists. So, a lot of times people will call my practice and maybe I'm not the fit for them or George isn't the fit for them, but I can help guide them to some support services. Someone just asked a question. Is
Telehealth
that Michael Phelps?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, good question. Oh boy, that's leading question. So
You just struck the wrong chord with Matt. Just by the way, that was the wrong question. That was a perfect question. Yeah.
There are a lot of mental health startups right now
Yes.
who are advertising heavily, whether that's the one that Michael Phelps is shilling for, or whomever else, other celebrities are doing it now.
Shit.
And getting paid money for it. Those are telehealth is just what we would call providing services through, a face-to-face platform.
Through social, yeah, through. So yeah, and
so doctors are doing that, that sort of thing. So there are these big companies now. I get emails from them all the time trying to recruit me. George, every therapist in the area right now, they're trying to suck up and say, hey, come work for us. They pay people terribly, so no one who's decent is actually doing that, would be my caveat that I know. Because most of those big conglomerates are paying their therapists very poorly. If you're a decent therapist, you don't need to go work like BetterHealth or Talkspace or whatever they are. Someone just said, do you know of any online therapy sessions, Zoom, etc.? I've seen people. Yes, that's what my practice is doing. All of our sessions right now are online. And that's what a lot of places are doing.
And I can I don't know if you guys have access, but I can find a directory, or you can Google AA and NA, and they're doing pretty much all their meetings virtual, so you can go to a meeting in Germany and all over the world. It's kind of neat. I'm not doing it, but I know some of my friends are in the program, and they've been pretty enamored by it. I mean, you still don't have the face-to-face, but it's pretty cool where they can literally wake up in the middle of the night and find a meeting and just dial in. So people that are early on in sobriety, that are playing it 1 hour at a time rather than 24. I know that's been helpful for people if they're willing to reach out. In terms of my services, real quick, I don't charge for any consultations. So what I do is I'm doing this as a service to the community, as just being here as an advisor, registered investment advisor, to just be here to answer questions, and wherever it goes, it goes. So I don't charge for that service. So if anybody has questions, concerns, want to set up a Zoom meeting, I'm not meeting with people face to face, but I am doing Zoom meetings all day long with clients. And portfolio managers and stuff. So if anybody wants to reach out, I don't charge for. So my service is a little different than the mental health side.
Yeah, ours, it's somewhat similar. First, if someone calls here, I often take the call and we can kind of talk for a little while. I get a sense of what's going on, and then can kind of guide you as to, where to go or who to call, or do we have someone at this practice to help you or whatever. So certainly if anyone's on the call and is looking for assistance for themselves, a loved one, their child, whomever, sometimes that may be us, sometimes it may not be. And I'm pretty upfront about that we can't help everyone at this practice. I've got a great team here, but there are things that we just don't treat, or that we would know that people do better than we do, so we're going to send you to that person.
I also listed, I forgot this slide. There are 2 emergency help from the government, Department of Human Services, financial assistance. They have their own division, and then disaster financial assistance with the food, housing, and bills. There are a bunch of programs. These are programs that we looked up, that we referred people to. Federal and student loan forbearance under the CARES Act actually expires December 31. Whether that's going to be extended into the new year with the new administration, I don't know yet. But if you're having trouble resuming the payments, obviously ask your loan servicer about loan repayments. I just had a client inherit a bunch of money, and I said, the big thing is the debt side. And here's a girl, her husband is making $30,000 a year, and whatever. And so I said, what do you have in debt? She goes, $50,000 of student debt. And I said, well, we got to pay that off first. Well, I just don't pay it. Well, and she doesn't care about her credit, so on and so forth. But that was one of the first things. It was from her grandmother. I said, your grandmother would have wanted you to be out of debt. So, but there are forbearance programs that people can look at. There's other, financial wisdom of Ebenezer Scrooge, kind of apropos for this time of year. And then the 4 agreements, performance track. So you guys that's your resources. So.
Yeah, so that first resource, the Financial Wisdom of Ebenezer Scrooge, is a really good book that kind of really brings finance and mental health together, and really speaks about how people will create these scripts about money in their lives that often hold them back from being successful or create a lot of difficulties interpersonally with each other. It's a quick read, I think it's like 120 pages. It is very apropos at this time of year, but it's a really good resource, and it's kind of has some like workbook pages to kind of help you figure some things out. It talks about budgeting, etc. The 4 agreements, like George spoke about tonight, is another great book. Because again, it's a very short book but very powerful. And then, for a lot of information about nutrition, sleep, and exercise, that's the performance triad from the U.S. Army, actually. So they have a lot of good resources that you can link to and check those out. So if we just go to that last slide, what I would like to leave everyone with is we really have to take care of ourselves. If you as a parent or as a husband or significant other or whatever relationships you have, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're no good to anybody, So I know none of us are really flying all that much right now, but for those of us that have or can think about it or seen it on a movie, the first thing they tell you in the little safety thing that no one's paying attention to is put that oxygen mask on yourself before you can help anyone else, right? So if you have someone else you have to take care of, you've got to take care of yourself first. If we don't do that, we end up with that picture that's happening on the bottom where people are screaming and the oxygen's being cut off and kids are getting face planted and no one really survives that. So, think about that and kind of really what that means about, if you're not taking care of your nutrition, sleep, and exercise, you're not taking care of your financial health, you're not taking care of your mental health, your physical health, you're really not going to be able to do much of anything to help yourself or anyone else. So really it starts with you. And there'll be bonus points to anyone that can name what movie the bottom little infographic is from if you throw that up in the chat. George already knows because he's seen me do that at a number of presentations. He's banned.
No, because it's my favorite movie.
I don't know.
You don't know? All right. No. So, Brian, if you want, I guess then maybe just go to that last slide or last couple slides so people have our information.
Yeah, there's our contact info.
Feel free to reach out. If anyone has any other questions and you want to throw them up in the chat right now, we have a couple minutes to address those. I do believe if you signed up, you will get a copy of this whole presentation emailed to you from MHA. So certainly look for that, or if you don't get it, let somebody know and we'll get it out to you.
And George, I was supposed to record the whole thing and you reminded me, so you are recorded midway through. You're the middle, you're the start, your presentation is midway of your presentation is the beginning of the recording. I'm sorry.
How unfortunate.
Too much stress
for everybody else.
But I'm sure we'll be doing others if this, we'll see how well this was received. So Douglas, thank you for the kudos. It's been my pleasure to help out with this whole thing, and just kind of giving back. So if anybody needs anything, shoot me an email, call my office, and I'm available.
All right. Any other questions before we wrap up?
At 3 minutes.
Just curious what the difference between the men's session to the female. The men's session's better, Chris. That's what the difference. No, I'm honestly not 100% sure. Thanks, Chris. Honestly not 100% sure. I spoke to Nicole, who's one of the presenters for the female presentation. I think that they were speaking a little bit more in regards to things like the glass ceiling and trying to break through in a career as a woman, and now having to come back and really focus on home and family and being the teacher for the children. A little bit more focused on that. I doubt that they have any slides that feature Fight Club, so that was where that.
Oh, you just answered the
panel was.
question.
No one guessed
Right,
it.
the Fight Club, that's what it is. So I had one today of all days, and I've always thought about this. What would happen if this was when I was a kid, right? 30 years ago. We didn't have all this technology. So my office is literally, I can walk here from the house, and I get a text from my wife. I'm on Zoom calls. We have no internet. She was on the phone with tech. They can't figure out. It's a power supply. So I had my daughter in my kitchen here, my son in my tenant's space because she's not here on Wednesdays, and my wife sitting in my office going, typing away. I'm like, I couldn't imagine doing this every day. But so it gave me a little taste of what we were doing back in March. So I get it. But I have a technician there. He's working around the clock. I'm paying him time and a half to get the internet back up and running at the house. No, Verizon's coming tomorrow. But so, it's all these things, but at least we have this technology and we have the ability to seek out resources, whether it's us or someone else, put it in the Google machine, as they call it, and ask for help. Don't, hesitate to reach out to somebody. And I know it's not easy. I've been there.
Definitely. All right, everyone. Well, with that, have a great night, and feel free to reach out if there's anything any of us could ever do for any of you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Have a good
You're
night.
welcome. Take care, guys.
Thanks, George. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Take care, guys.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure.